Have you ever wondered why you keep attracting the same type of partner or why you become someone else entirely when you start falling in love or catching feelings and losing yourself in that relationship? Or maybe you're noticing a lot of self-sabotage that's happening in your relationship that's not you, or you're shaming yourself for certain behavior traits that seem to be driving partners away. In today's episode, we are going to cover all of this and we're going to play with the concept of shadow work and archetypes, the thing that's behind the sabotaging behavior. And these are the parts of us that are showing up unconsciously, and they are starting to shape our relationships and drive our coping mechanisms and behavior. And these are also the parts of us that we have disowned, we've hidden, we've rejected, all in the sake of not being rejected or abandoned by other people. These are the parts of us that we don't want to admit to others that we have these parts within us. And this could be pleasing, proving, being perfect, sacrificing ourselves. We are going to go through all of that today. And this has been inspired not only by a journey that I'm currently going on right now in regards to my inner child, but also my brand new ebook that I have launched this week, if you're listening to this in real time. And it's called The Anxious Heart's Guide to Healing Anxious Attachment. And within this book, we are looking at the different anxious attachment archetypes that may be showing up for you in your relationships. So we're going to cover 4 out of 8 of those archetypes in this episode. But if you want to go ahead and download that book for free, the link is in the show notes below. So, shadow work and archetypes are really important for attachment healing because they do all link back to that inner child, the abandoned inner child within. So, this is an integral pillar of what we do in our work when we are healing our anxious attachment. So, this is a very important, if not essential, episode. So, let's get going, guys, and start to become more aware of these archetypes within us without that judgment and shame, but compassion. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to the Relationship Rehab Podcast. I am Samantha, your host and attachment trauma specialist and relationship coach, helping you heal those anxious attachment wounds and become more secure, calm, and confident in your life and relationships. So, before we get going, guys, I want to ask you a big favor. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you're loving it and you're sharing all the episodes with your friends, if you could just take a few seconds to rate and review this show so we can bring more people to this community, to this world, so they can have this information for free to heal their anxious attachment as well. I would really appreciate it. And thank you so much in advance. All right, so let's get going with this episode. So, first of all, let's have a look at what is shadow work. What is the shadow? And this has come from the work of Carl Jung. He is a psychologist, and his famous quote in regards to explaining what the shadow is everything within us that we've hidden, rejected, or repressed in order to be accepted. As a child, there were certain traits or behaviors that we did that we have learned along the way that is not acceptable, either in our society, in our family, cultural space, or just even to be able to get that love and attention and affection that we're wanting from our parents. So we have learned that we need to suppress these parts of ourselves in order to be loved and accepted. Now, this could be quote unquote negative parts like anger or jealousy, or this could be quote unquote positive parts like being outspoken and being confident. And what has happened is we have regressed and suppressed those parts of us, and they have become our shadow. But the thing with the shadow, just like the term shadow, it follows us around everywhere. We cannot escape it. We may not be conscious of it, but it is there in the background, driving all of our thoughts, our actions, and our emotions in our lives and in our relationships. So Jung explains this in 3 sections. So we have our ego, which is our conscious self. We have our personal unconscious, which is the shadow, the repressed memories, the trauma that we're holding within. And then we have the collective unconscious. So this is shared ancestral trauma, generational trauma that we are carrying, maybe as Black people, as women, or part of a culture or a cohort of society that have been repressed in the past. And we're still carrying those wounds and traumas. So the shadow itself can come from our personal unconscious, but it can also come from our collective unconscious. So we're going to get into the different shadows and archetypes we might observe in our anxious attachment system. But when it comes to love, our shadow, it shows up as part of ourselves, like I said, that we don't want to admit. So for me personally, I was hiding the fact that I can be quite needy sometimes, or I was jealous, or I was shaming myself, being very critical of myself, and that fear of abandonment. I didn't want people outside of me to see those parts of it, including my partner. So I used to wear masks. I used to play it cool. I used to just be chill when inside I was reeling and ripping and spiraling because I was so afraid. My abandoned inner child was holding on to this fear of abandonment, that everything is crashing down around us. But because we are not expressing it, even aware of it, we're pushing it down with shame, with judgment, with criticism. But the thing is, the more that we suppress, the more that we push it down, the more power it has over us, and the more it strengthens in its role in the driver's seat of our lives. And then we start to wonder what's wrong with us. Why are we completely losing control of ourselves? And why are we showing up in this way when we know that this isn't us? This isn't what we want to do consciously. So what the hell is happening? Why am I sabotaging this connection, this relationship? So Jung coined the term persona, and what this means is like the masks that we wear in our society and with people that are all around us. So for example, I might go out there and say that, oh yeah, I'm a really empathic, loving, nurturing person, and I want to live up to that identity. I want people to see that part of me. I don't want them to see the needy, the jealous, the critical side of me that gets really anxious and afraid sometimes, because maybe I have coined that as being weak, or vulnerability is a weakness and people can use that against me. So of course I'm not going to show that part of me. But what we're doing then is we're keeping it locked in our unconscious. And this is the version that we are allowing other people, the world, to see. And we're afraid to admit these parts of us. So every time we do that, it's almost like we're just wrapping another layer of shame around these parts of us, around our inner child, and pushing it into the corner of the room because it's bad. And you need to stay in the corner and not come out because you're sabotaging me, because you're ruining my life. And it becomes a darker and darker place when we do this. And the key to this is to be able to bring those traits out of the shadow, not see them as bad traits, because there's no such thing as positive, negative, good, or bad traits. We need to be able to become aware of them, but also integrate them and be able to understand the message that it has for us and see it as an invitation for us to really lean into the things that we need to heal, that we need to pay attention to in order to live fulfilling and whole lives. Because the more that we send our inner child to the corner with these traits, the more that we are living our lives feeling very unfulfilled, feeling very shameful of ourselves, feeling like there's something intrinsically wrong with us. Because as much as we want them to disappear, they are not going to disappear. They are operating in the background. And the more we continue to suppress these traits, so for example, let's say neediness, needing reassurance and constant validation because we're so afraid of being abandoned, the more that we don't listen to that, the more that we are going to be reactive and explosive and compulsive in our behaviors, when things will start to rise up to the surface and spill out of everywhere because we cannot contain it anymore. So, when it comes to archetypes, what I'm going to share with you in this episode is not based on Jung's archetypes. This is a concept that I have been playing with that has come from me. This is my work in terms of seeing what these different roles and archetypes play out in our relationships when we are dealing with an anxious attachment style. So, officially, technically, literally, the archetype that we're talking about is the inner child. The abandoned inner child is the official archetype that we're focusing on in this episode. And the different roles that she starts to play when she feels anxious and scared in relationships. So the 8 archetypes that you will see in my brand new ebook is the roles that the inner child plays. But I've called them archetypes because I want to have a little fun here, because it doesn't all have to be heavy and dark all of the time. We do get to bring some lightness to this work as well. And the biggest thing that I have noticed in my own personal journey when I have been working with the inner child and working with the shadow and the archetypes is that not only does it lead to more wholeness and fulfillment and contentment as we start to step into who we are authentically and truly and start to unapologetically be ourselves, but it can also help us get back in touch with our intuition. A lot of us have suppressed and ignored and quietened and silenced our intuition because it has gotten in the way of us receiving that love and attention that we've needed as a child. So now as adults, we don't even know what the intuition sounds like. And if we feel like we can hear it, we're not listening to it because we're doubtful of it. We don't really trust it in terms of guiding us and following our hearts. Instead, we're living up here in the mind, being able to constantly analyze and make everything make sense and making our decisions from this space rather than from our intuition, from our heart, even though, especially as women, we are extremely connected to our intuition. But there's all this fog and clutter and darkness that is surrounding our intuition because we have sent it to that corner with our inner child. So we have this inability to trust ourselves. So doing inner child work, being aware of our shadows and integrating our shadows can really help us trust and follow and listen to our intuition. So another note before we dive into the specific archetypes is that it's important to listen to this episode and to do this work as you're integrating and processing your shadows is to lead with compassion. It is so important, my loves. Compassion is key because if we're doing this from a place of feeling icky or feeling shameful or judgmental towards ourselves or critical, then it's not going to work because you're continuing to strengthen the shadow when you're leading with that type of energy. Shadow work isn't about blaming ourselves and criticizing ourselves for being this way. It's about becoming whole again and seeing that these parts of us, the neediness, the constant reassurance, the jealousy, the anger, these are all suppressed parts of ourselves that we have kept hidden because it has been wreaking havoc in our relationships. I mean, it is anyway, regardless of whether we do this work or not. And the more that we can be compassionate and understanding, the more that it will start to dissipate and we can start to integrate it into us, take back our control and our power and lead our lives from a conscious space. And one of my favorite quotes from Carl Jung is that he said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. It is in the driver's seat, whether you like it or not, whether you do this work or not. All right, so let's get started with the different archetypes that I pulled out of my ebook and the four that I wanted to talk about in this episode. So these four are roles, like I said, I've coined them archetypes. These are how the abandoned inner child shows up in relationships. So the first one is the martyr, the sacrificing woman. And she is very much driven by the belief of if I sacrifice and I give so much, I will get the love and attention that I crave. But I sacrifice and I give so much, but I never get it back in return. So these types of women, the role that we take on in our relationships is that we show up fully, fiercely, and often selflessly. We give our all to our partners, to our friends, to our family, and we often do it at the expense of our own dreams and desires and needs and peace. It is the classic example of self-abandonment, that we're not listening to what we need or what we want, but putting other people's needs and wants before ours in order to sustain the relationship, in order to keep the relationship. And sometimes we might pride ourselves on this as well, that we say, that's just who I am. I'm such a giver. I just give all that I can. And I may even like that about myself. But when you dig a little bit deeper, when you overextend and you overgive, there may be low level, bubbling up to the surface, resentment and bitterness that might be coming up. And I saw this in my own relationship with my partner in the past, where I wanted to be everything for him and I wanted him to take center stage and I wanted him to succeed in his dreams. And it meant so much to me because I loved him so much. I wanted to. Initially, I thought I wanted to take on this role. And I moved from Australia, where I was, and it was a big dream of mine to be in Australia, to have my working visa and live my life there. But I ended up sacrificing that in order to move back to Bangkok. And I was almost like gaslighting myself in the time, thinking, oh, well, I don't even like Australia. I love Thailand. So I'm just going to move back. But when I'm really honest with myself, and I'm going to encourage you guys to be honest with yourselves here as well, what's really happening? And what was really happening for me is I was afraid of losing him if I was to stay in Australia. So I sacrificed that dream to move back in order to keep the relationship, in order to keep him happy. Another thing about the martyr is that we tend to anticipate and attune ourselves very much to our partners and their needs and their desires. So when we think about attunement, and it has not been strengthened in a way to be attuned to ourselves in childhood, instead it's been strengthened in a way to be attuned to others, because we've had to be attuned to our partner, our parents and our caregivers, because we need to know what mood they're in order to understand how we need to present to them. Because if they're in a bad mood, we need to be a certain way. If they're in a good mood, we can relax. So we now bring in this hypervigilance into our relationships. So we may not be attuned with our own bodies and our own minds and our own desires, but we're very attuned to our partners, and they don't even need to ask. We just know. Again, we might pride ourselves on that. I just know my partner inside out. I know them better than they know themselves. And we're so amazing at holding space for our partner and their wounds and their traumas. I'm like creating this safe environment in my relationship. And I'm the person that people come to, and I'm the shoulder that people cry on. And it's all being driven by this subconscious desire to be needed. We need to be needed, because when we are needed, we are worthy and we are safe in our relationships. But quietly, underneath the surface, whether we are conscious of it or not, there may be some resentment that is simmering, that is starting to bubble. And then we start to feel overlooked. We start to feel unappreciated, taken for granted, and like we are giving our all to this relationship and getting very little back in return. And we may reactively look to that person and call them out and be like, you're not giving enough to this relationship. You're not meeting me where I'm at. And that might well be the case. That might be the truth. But I want to encourage you to look within as well, and ask yourself some curious questions of, am I overextending? Am I overgiving here and expecting people to meet my level of overgiving and overextending because that's how I'm presenting, when reality, they may not have the capacity to. And then the ironic thing of this is, even though we might be craving that can't say the word reciprocity, it feels uncomfortable, even unsafe to receive. We may start being complimented, or they may start doing things around the house for us and doing things for us, but it just feels unsafe. It's better that I do it myself, because it feels safe to be in this role where I'm sacrificing and I'm doing everything, because we believe that if we just love harder, if we give more and do more, they are going to finally see our worth, driven by this unconscious belief that we are not worthy unless we are playing this role. So at the root is this wounded belief, like I said, that love must be earned through self-abandonment. Going back to childhood, where we have been in positions where we've had to abandon our boundaries, our needs, our emotions in order to keep other people comfortable, in order to make sure that dad doesn't get angry or mum doesn't get stressed. And we have to abandon these things. And that choosing ourselves is actually selfish. I know that I grew up hearing things like, oh, self-love is selfish. And to love yourself is like, oh, who does she think she is? She loves herself so much. And it was a bad thing. And now that's ingrained. It's a bad thing to love yourself. It's a bad thing to be selfish. How selfish of you. It has such a power to it, this word. So selfish that if you stop overgiving, you're going to be left behind and you're going to be seen as selfish. And that therefore And that therefore leads to rejection and abandonment. So the shadow for this archetype is the fear of abandonment and rejection of selfishness. You might find that when people are selfish or when people set boundaries or they are not in a space of sacrifice, it might trigger you that, oh my God, they're so selfish. Here I am giving my all and giving everything to everyone, and they are selfish by putting themselves first. And it might trigger you deep, deep within. And also the discomfort of receiving as well. So, the behaviors that might come out of this, the sabotaging behaviors you might recognize if you are playing a martyr role, is the lack of boundaries, saying yes to everything and everyone. You have to say yes, and you feel bad if you say no. Emotional explosions after prolonged suppression. So, maybe you've allowed someone to, in your words, walk all over you, or you've allowed them to keep asking you favors all the time and you're getting nothing back in return and there's no exchange. You might have this explosion where all of a sudden you're now cutting them out of your life. Like, oh, this person is just so selfish and they just want so much from me. But when we are inviting ourselves to get curious, it's because we haven't set boundaries with this person. It's because we've allowed them to. And that might be hard to hear, but it can be an invitation into changing some of the behaviors that we need to look at. And we might also find ourselves staying in relationships long past their expiration. So the opposite of cutting people out of our lives is staying in the relationship because we feel like we've invested so much, we've sacrificed so much to be in this relationship that now we cannot leave it. Even though this person is treating us like shit, even though this person doesn't respect us, and we feel this energy, yet we can't find it. We can't bring ourselves to leave. So, what I want to invite you guys to do, if this is resonating, is to practice healthy selfishness. Yes, it's a thing. And what this means is setting boundaries, putting your needs first in the kind and loving and respectful way, learning how to communicate those things and tending to our own needs with the same care that you offer others. This might feel uncomfortable at first, but take it slowly and take a small steps. What is one thing that you can start doing for yourself that feels uncomfortable, but not to the point where it completely overwhelms you and shuts your system down? Maybe look at some of the things that you're doing for other people and say, how can I do that for myself? How can I give that for myself? Because at the moment, I'm looking at things outside of myself to give me that. How can I do that? And this almost like this theme of devotion. How can you devote to yourself more? And the more that you show up for you, the more that you have to pour into others. And it's not coming from this space of sacrifice and pouring all that you have into others, but keeping a lot of that energy back for yourself. I think it was Oprah that gave me this term, or gave the world this term of the cup and the saucer. So she said that the cup is for you. Whatever energy that you have in your cup, that's for you. And when you give that energy, that love, that attention to yourself, your cup runneth over and it will start to spill into the saucer. And what's collected in the saucer is what you give to others. And I thought that was really profound and affected me in a deep way when I was stuck in people pleasing behaviors. And just know that the more that you choose yourself in relationships, in life, the more clearly you'll see who truly meets you in return. So when you start to pull back from, sacrificing and helping others all the time in a way that's abandoning yourself, and you start to set those boundaries, you will start to see who respects you and who encourages you to do this and who is actually benefiting from you having a lack of boundaries. And now they don't like it. And they start to pull away from you, and allow them to, because they were not really meant for you. They were not really supporting you and the person that you were evolving into. Instead, they were just benefiting from your lack of boundaries. All right, the second one, the chameleon. Now, my chameleon girls, we are molding ourselves in order to fit into boxes and roles and personas that other people want us to be. So this is very much pulling on that Carl concept of the persona. We are living our lives wearing this mask and maybe even the armor as well, because we cannot allow other people to see these parts of ourselves, these traits of ourselves, because that will be very scary. They may even lead to that rejection and abandonment that is driving our inner child to adopt this role. So we have this idea that we must become a certain version of ourselves to be liked and accepted by others. I for sure was a chameleon girl because I had experiences when I was a child where I was excluded and rejected in school and bullied for being who I am, for loving school and being a bit of a nerd and loving books and raising my hand all the time for the answers. And people used to snigger at me. Kids used to make fun of me. And I learned through those experiences that it's not safe to be me. I need to suppress the fact that I love singing all the time because I would be made fun of. I had to suppress that I loved school because it wasn't cool and I would be bullied for it. So instead, I would hide these parts of myself away and show up in a different way in order to be liked and accepted. And the downfall of this, and you will for sure resonate with this if you are also a chameleon girl, is you just don't feel like yourself. You have this like emptiness within that you are putting on a show for other people, but inside it's like this emptiness. And this leaks into another archetype that I'm going to talk about in a moment. But the chameleon specifically is that, again, we have this high attunement to others and what they like and what they're accepting. And we're molding ourselves to be that. And their moods and energies and unspoken needs are an influence of that. So you tend to be the peacekeeper in relationships, and we're not speaking up for what we want, and we are the ones who morph ourselves just enough to avoid that conflict or to avoid that rejection. As a result, we lose ourselves in that relationship. We lose touch with our desires and our boundaries, hiding those parts of ourselves, wearing that mask and going with the flow. Now, these are my girls who are being super chill in relationships, but deep down you are exploding like a volcano and you are being uncontained and just constantly anxious. But whenever they call, you're like, cool, yeah, all good. It's all good. We're going with the flow. Oh, you don't want to be in a committed relationship even though we've been dating for 10 months? No dramas, no biggie. I'm cool. We're chameleonizing ourselves to fit their standards, to fit what they want, to fit the mold so we don't get rejected and abandoned. And we also have this fear that if people knew who we truly were, if I now, it could be the opposite, right? Where we may have the more fearful, avoidant individual believing that if I allow this person to get too close, if I allow this person to, if I get into a relationship with this person, they are going to see parts of me that I have been kept hidden for so long that I don't show other people, and they're going to reject and abandon me. Can you see this theme here? It's all leading into rejection and abandonment. So I cannot allow them to get too close because that would mean that they walk away. That would mean that they would add to the shame and the judgment and the criticism I'm already pouring and dumping onto my inner child. And as a result, we feel very unseen in our relationships, unfulfilled or even invisible. Like this person doesn't really know us because deep down, we don't really know ourselves. We're keeping these traits suppressed. And by tuning into these traits, by connecting to our inner child, we can bring her out of the darkness, bring her out of that corner and start to integrate and start to see these traits as not a bad thing and start to allow ourselves to be a little bit more vulnerable in our relationships, to take those risks, to show our true selves. And if that person walks away from us, then at least we know that we are being integral to ourselves. We are being authentic to ourselves. And that is what matters, that we are no longer rejecting and abandoning ourselves and our inner child. When we are in that space, you will start to notice that this fear of abandonment will start to dissipate because now you're pouring that energy into yourself. So when people leave your life, it doesn't have such a hold on you. So the shadow that is behind the chameleon is, like I said, this fear of rejection, the loss of identity, not really knowing who you are, and maybe a deep resentment towards others for not really seeing you. And maybe again, we're projecting that outwardly, that you don't know who I am. You don't really see me or hear me or understand me. Again, though, invite yourself. Do I see and hear and understand myself fully? Am I fully revealing myself to this person so they can see and hear and understand me? Another side of the shadow here, another way to identify that we have an unconscious chameleon pattern is have a look to see if you are triggered by others that you know are wearing a mask. I used to be super triggered by this. If I would see someone playing up or being something that just doesn't feel real, it feels fake. If you know this fakeness, it used to trigger me so much. I used to be like, why is she being fake? Why is she being this way? And it's because I was being that way, because it was trying to show me a part of myself that I was being. So it tends to, when we get the ick, when we're triggered by other people in this way, it tends to be because it's poking at our own shadow. And some of the behaviors that I might see being a chameleon is people pleasing, fawning, emotional shape shifting, suppressing our needs until we explode or ghost others and cut them out of our lives. So, what I want you to do is start to reclaim your authentic self. Start to notice what you prefer and what parts of yourself feel safe enough to start to show people. Of course, create that safe environment with people that feel safe, that love you. Start with your family, your friends, your partner, even yourself. Start to practice self expression with yourself in the mirror of what you really want to say and who you really want to be. If you start in a private space, and then you will start to build up that confidence to be able to bring that into the public space. And then start to notice when you are wearing a mask and invite yourself, how can I lower my mask just a little bit in this environment? It doesn't feel safe, and that's why I'm wearing a mask in this social environment. How can I just drop it just that little bit? And it might look like just pulling back a little bit from the conversation. I don't need to be proving myself so much in this space. All right, next archetype is the mother, the caretaker. Oh, this is probably my main one, the main archetype that I would morph into in my relationship. And this is because we believe that our worth lies in how much we care for others. Personally, in my experience, this was programmed into me because as the oldest child, I was automatically, I feel like, put in this role that I need to care for my younger siblings. And the more that I care for them, the more that I'm responsible and a good girl in this way, the more I would get love and praise and attention. And therefore, I would feel worthy of receiving that because I'm taking on this caring role. And as an adult, as we grow into this role, we start to morph into this role in regards to, again, starting to pride ourselves on being this person. I'm so responsible. And I love to be that person that leads, but the energy we're leading with is control. I'm trying to keep the peace. I'm trying to maintain control over everybody and everyone. So I'm just going to play this role as a mother, as a caretaker, because underneath, and it's a beautiful thing, my loves, we do have this deep capacity for love and nurturing, and we want everybody to be happy and cared for and protected. But sometimes that love, it can turn into over functioning, over micromanaging, and we're not allowing people to make mistakes and to be themselves and to go out there into the world and do their thing. Instead, when we have more control, and again, it's the archetype of the mother, the more we have control, the safer we feel in terms of our own fears and anxieties. And in relationships, we might find ourselves mothering our partner. I know for sure I did this a lot, and I'm going to pull on an example from the same relationship with this guy. I constantly reminded him of his appointments. I was constantly cooking and doing all the chores and doing everything for him. And we traveled once. And this is the breakthrough, the turning point, if you will, that I started to notice that I was being a mother. And he exploded while we were on this trip. I didn't even know I was doing this. I thought it was just a part of me and my personality and who I am. But he started to bring it all up to the surface. So when we were at the airport, I remember this moment where I was carrying the passports and he wanted to hold his own passport, maybe because he felt this energy of being mothered. And he's like, "Can I have my passport?" And I'm like, "No, why? Why do you want your own passport? Let me just keep it, because underneath all of that, I didn't really trust him to take care of his own passport. I didn't trust him to organize things. I booked all the hotels and the flights and the excursions. I didn't really trust him to do it properly. So I did it. I carried the passport. And when we were on the trip, I kind of told him what to wear. Oh, I told him what to wear, and I'm like, maybe you shouldn't wear that. Why don't you wear this? Because I wanted things to be perfect. I wanted things to be exactly how I wanted them to be, because I wanted this trip to live up to my own expectations. And I wanted him to be a certain way in order to live up to that fantasy and vision I had for this trip. And I was even sometimes teaching him on how to show up for me and how to do things. Do it this way, do it that way. And I was micromanaging him and the relationship to the point where, and I learned this term then when I started doing my work, I started to emasculate him. I started to strip him of his role as a man. And I took on that role of caring and protecting and doing. I was very much the masculine energy in that relationship. And he knew that. He felt that. And he told me all about how he was feeling. And sometimes we react to that, we respond in thinking, well, I have to be. I have to be in this masculine energy because I can't trust you to do it. I can't trust you to show up. But what's really going on underneath, when you really get curious, is it's not the lack of trust in them, it's a lack of trust in yourself. I really couldn't trust myself, allow myself to lean back into my feminine. I couldn't trust myself to be in this state of receiving and surrender because that doesn't feel safe. I feel like I'm going to be rejected if I'm in this space. I feel like I'm not going to have any worth or meaning in my relationships if I allow myself to be in this space. So the shadow is control, and it's masked as care. It's this fear of irrelevance. I'm not going to be significant to you or have meaning in life unless I show up in this space. And belief that my needs are secondary or even burdensome. Like, I don't want to be a burden, so I would rather be burdened. And the behaviors that we see, like I said, is this emasculation. We strip our men of being men. And we micromanage, we overfunction, we're possibly passive aggressive in a way because we don't know how to communicate it. And we resent others when they don't step into that role because we're taking up all that space in that role. But we may not see that. We may not be conscious of it. So my invitation to my mothering women is to step back and allow others to show up for you. Step back. And I know this is uncomfortable because maybe you have to release the reins of control. But step back and allow others to show up for you. Let yourself be supported and held rather than being the one always doing the holding. So get curious about any resistance that you might feel. And the last archetype we'll explore is what I call the perfect performer. So my performing queens here feels like they have to constantly prove and perform in order to be loved the way that they deserve. You have to be perfect. You have to present physically as perfection. And you have to just get everything right all of the time. When we link it back into childhood, if we didn't do things right or if we made a mistake, we would get punished. We may have love withdrawn from us, and that doesn't feel safe. It leads to rejection and abandonment. So I have to present myself a certain way. And it is a little bit different from the chameleon because this is driven by perfectionism. So I have to look completely perfect and I have to be completely perfect in order to get the love that I deserve. And this is our inner child living up to maybe our parents' expectations and standards. And now we have leaked that into our relationships where we're trying to live up to our partner's expectations and standards. We are presenting as this perfectly polished individual. We are accomplished, we are successful, and we're always ambitious. We're always striving, and we feel safe in this space where we're constantly go, go, go. And we might say that, oh, it's because we're super ambitious. We're type A, we're go-getters. Again, we might love that about ourselves. It is not a bad trait. I also have this trait. I love my ambition. But what is the energy that is underneath the ambition? Is it ambition from a space of needing to prove myself, to prove my worth, or is it ambition because I want to make this greatest impact in the world? It can be both. We need to get curious here. So, my perfect performers, we've built that success, we take good care of our appearance, and we become the kind of partner that we want to be, that we want to attract, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But underneath it all, there's possibly this quiet insecurity that if I am not this particular person, that no one's going to love me. And I have to earn affection. I have to keep up to the standards of society with beauty, with my work that I need to get done on my body and my face. And again, need to mold myself into a place where I'm going to be accepted by the opposite sex. And as a result, we might downplay our needs, pretend to be chill, that chill person, hide our emotions because it doesn't live up to this perfect persona. And we believe that being this perfect partner, they're going to stay with us. And if we allow ourselves to unravel in any way, they're going to walk away from us. And as a result, we tend to attract partners that are with us solely for the way that we look. They're with us solely because of the persona that we are presenting. And then as soon as we drop the veil and as soon as we relax in the relationship, they start to panic and they're like, who's this person? This isn't the person that I started dating. You're no longer perfect. You're no longer on the pedestal that I've put you on, and I want out. And we are attracting these types of people that are very much living on the surface level. They're not ready for the humanness of what it means to be human and deep, flawed, and imperfect. And deep down, we're tired of being perfect. We're tired of living up to this persona and we just want to let our bellies hang out, literally and figuratively. We want people to see these parts of us because we feel like we want to be loved for who we are, not just who we are when we're performing. We really want people to love who we are and these parts of us that we're suppressing. But again, want to invite you to love those parts of you first. Are you loving those parts of you? Are you shaming those parts of you? And again, a way to recognize this shadow is if you see others performing, or if you see others looking perfect, being perfect, it might trigger you. You might become a bit judgmental because you're recognizing your own mask in theirs. You're seeing them as competition. Now we're competing in who can be the most perfect competition. And we tend to have this resistance to these types of people, but use it as an invitation for you to look within and be like, where am I being a performer in my own lives, in my business, in my relationships? The shadow underneath all of this is unworthiness, the fear of being too much or not enough, and fear of vulnerability, and maybe this disgust in vulnerability in others. When you see people being them fully themselves, when you see people wearing what they want, being what they want, saying what they want, we might feel triggered and intimidated by that because that's who we really want to be. Instead of being intimidated, how can we be inspired by people who are just unapologetically being themselves? So the sabotage we might see as a result is like this overcompensation through achieving. Like, look how amazing I am. You need to treat me a certain way because I'm so amazing. We might start to develop a little bit of narcissistic traits. Again, not a bad thing, but we're seeing ourselves as such a catch. And now we have these high expectations of people in our lives. We may have high expectations of ourselves, the way that we look, the way that we are presenting. And it's this emotional and physical repression, self-silencing, critical of other people's flaws and being quite judgmental of how people are showing up for themselves in their own lives. So my healing invitation for you is to overcome your fear of rejection and allow yourself to be seen, because true connection happens when you drop that performance and you're willing to be vulnerable with others. Allow vulnerability to take that spotlight. So these are the archetypes that we have talked about today in today's episodes: the martyr, the chameleon, the caretaker, and the perfect performer. There are 4 others in my free ebook that I would love for you to explore. And like I said, you can get the link to that book in the show notes. And you probably guessed by now, they are all rooted in that one core wound, and that is abandonment. It is all coming from the abandoned inner child, the belief that we are not enough as we are, and that people are going to walk out of our lives, and that is the most unsafe space to be in. But the cure of that is to no longer abandon yourself. That even when people choose to walk out of your life, because you're now bringing those parts and those traits out of the shadow, that you are no longer feel like this is a threat to your survival, because you've got your own back, that you have prioritized your own peace, your own needs. And this is not about now being selfish. This is not about completely retracting from everyone in your life, but it is a balance. It is about having discernment, that when you say yes to something, you're doing it from an energy of overflow, that you're doing it from an energy of, I love this person so much and I want to support them, but it's not in detriment to my own peace and my own needs and my own sense of safety. I'm not doing this to prove myself. I'm not doing this so this person will like me. I'm doing it because I'm a freaking amazing person. I'm a good person. You can be an incredible, amazing, generous, giving person, but also be that person for yourself as well. So it is really much a lesson that I've had to learn, that we are all learning, really, and that is that we don't need to be perfect. We don't need to mold ourselves. We don't need to mother others. And we don't need to martyr ourselves in order to be loved, in order to get our needs met, in order to be in relationships that feel completely fulfilling and loving. So healing really does begin when you start getting honest with yourself about these roles that you've been playing, and gently invite yourself to start rewiring them, not with shame, but with compassion, and how you can start to integrate these shadows so the sabotaging behavior is no longer present in your relationships. And with every boundary you set, with every authentic choice you make, with every part of yourself that you allow to be seen, you're doing the work on bringing your shadow into the light, into the consciousness, and integrating it into yourself, into your authentic, true, secure self. So don't forget to download that free ebook if you want to know more about the archetypes and the next steps into healing as well. I talk you through that in the ebook. It's the perfect next step from this episode. And to go deeper into this work, the ebook has a lot in and of itself. But if you're like, I'm ready to dive completely into my shadows, but I need a little bit of extra support here on integrating those traits and those parts of me that I have repressed, we can explore doing that work together. You can book a one-on-one session with me just solely for shadow work, or you can look into the one-on-one coaching program where shadow work and rewiring limiting beliefs are very much big pillars of this program as well. So just feel free to reach out, send me a DM as well if that's something that you want to explore. And my last invitation to you, my loves, is I want to invite you to leave in the comments, what archetype do you feel is your primary one? You could resonate with all 4 of them. What do you feel like is your primary one that you are noticing and witnessing that are showing up in your relationship? So we can see what archetypes are at play for others as well. And I'd love to see any takeaways or breakthroughs that you've had as well. So as always, if this episode resonated, share it with a friend that needs to hear this. Tag me on Instagram and let me know that you've listened to this episode. All right, loves, I shall see you in the next episode. And until then, I'm sending you all the love and light.